Happy Friday, Dog Nation. Welcome to Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. My name is Brandon Adams, and I have some good and bad news for you here on today's show. The bad news is, believe it or not, Jeff Sintel's actually taking a little vacation. He doesn't do that often, but Jeff is, I'm going to let his location be remaining secret, even though I should probably out him, given some of the stuff that he said about me on his own shows here as of late. But no Jeff today. We have a great guest filling in for him. I'll tell you more about that. I think you're going to have a really good time with this. I've also got some great news, as I said. I'm going to be giving away, or at least my friends at Marlowe's going to be giving away a pair of VIP tickets to Dog Nation Appreciation. I'm going to tell you more about that in a couple of minutes. It is going to be a great show. Dog Nation Daily begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I was telling our video audience a moment ago, before we start Dog Nation Daily, that just to go ahead and give you a little bit of a heads up. It doesn't happen very often, but Jeff Sintel, our normal Friday guest, is actually on vacation. So he's going to enjoy some time. This is his battery recharging moment coming off the signing day from 2018. We'll allow Jeff to do that. We actually have a really good guest coming up, and it's going to be recruiting focused. So for those of you who want your 2019 recruiting fix, I'm actually going to give that to you today, but in a slightly different way than you've come to expect here on Dog Nation Daily. And also coming up in just a couple of minutes, I am really excited about some details of a Dog Nation Appreciation VIP ticket giveaway. These VIP tickets for Dog Nation Appreciation essentially sold out in nanoseconds. But a pair was held back by our friends at Marlowe's to do a giveaway. So absolutely free. Someone's going to win them. I'll give you the details coming up on that in just a couple of minutes here today on Dog Nation Daily. And, of course, it's great to have you with us on the program. And speaking of Dog Nation Appreciation, two of our special guests there that day are going to be former Georgia running backs Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. Now, this is a very big week for a lot of guys like that, including another UGA senior, Isaiah Wynn. They're all at the NFL Combine right now. They've been going through the bench press work. They'll get ready to run the 40-yard dash, I believe, today. And, in the midst of all of kind of what's going on here, you really see more examples of why I think the Georgia fans, have been proud of both Chubb and Michel for the last 4 years. Going to be proud of them right here at the NFL Combine. And even if you're like me and you're sort of a take it or leave it NFL guy for the most part, I think when you start looking in on these fall Sundays to come in the years ahead, I think there's going to be a sense of pride that Georgia fans take about the careers that Chubb's about to embark on and the career that Sony Michel's about to embark on. And the NFL Scouting Combine that's going on this weekend is sort of another example of that. I saw where Nick Chubb, what was his bench press rep? 29 reps of the 225 there, matching Saquon Barkley for the highest total yet for the running backs here in 2018. And, to me, this is so appropriate for Chubb's career in that, once again, kind of flying under the radar, because the guy that he matches here, Barkley from Penn State, is going to get all the attention. He's going to be noticed. He's talked about as the top draft prospect as a running back, but right there is Nick Chubb is putting up the same kind of reps, putting up the same kind of numbers, and I think potentially, and unless I'm no NFL scout, so take this with a grain of salt, but I think potentially having a very similar career. You tell me you don't want Nick Chubb as your running back if you're an NFL team, and the work that he did on the bench press kind of proof of that. And yeah, by the way, when it comes to Nick Chubb at the NFL Scouting Combine, he did meet with the media a little bit. And, one of the things that he talked about was this sort of new landscape that exists now for running backs in the NFL. We saw Todd Gurley sort of burst through as a first-round pick a couple years ago, and he's Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL here for 2017. This is a guy who sort of created a new era for running backs. I think Alvin Kamara, the former Tennessee back, now at the New Orleans Saints, kind of in that same mold too. And I think guys like Nick Chubb see an opportunity to make money for themselves and be the centerpiece of a football team now, the way that really wasn't true for a few years ago. And this week, Nick Chubb talked a little bit about that. Let's listen.
I think over the past few years, the running backs have done a great job of coming in and on the NFL level and kind of put a position in a better situation. Using running backs a lot more in the passing game, things like that. So those guys definitely helped out in that area.
What's funny to me about this quote is, I don't want to be too in the weeds here, but the people that work on the show with me every day would agree, that's the most in-depth Nick Chubb's probably ever been on any kind of quote. That's the most substantial answer he's ever going to give you on anything. You can tell that he's really put a lot of thought into that because this is his livelihood at stake. And I think there was this fear a couple of years ago by a lot of running backs that, wait a second, is this still a premium position? I mean, it is at high school. It's the big man on campus at every high school is the star running back. And For the most part, that's still true in college, but is this still a position in the NFL where you can get paid? Or is this one of those deals where they want to sort of buy you on the cheap, use you up, and then throw you back on the free agent market before you get a chance to make any real money? If you're a guy like Nick Chubb, I think you probably had some legitimate concerns about that. But the Kamara stuff and the Todd Gurley stuff, that all changes that. All of a sudden, running backs are kind of back to being that in vogue star position again. Once again, in the NFL. And you can tell based on just how thoughtful and detailed Chubb's answer was there, that's something that he's thought about. Something else that he has also obviously spent a lot of time thinking about is the comfort level he has with his partner in the running back core for Georgia the last few years, Sony Michel. Everything together on the field. They were seen together all the time off the field. They're also going through the NFL Combine this week together as well, and that's something that Chubb told reporters that he's kind of glad to have Sony and also another Georgia teammate by his side.
Yeah, it definitely makes it more fun. You know, Sony's here. Isaiah Wynn is here with me same day, so we get to hang out and go through the process together.
Yeah, so they're obviously getting a chance to do that, and I think that it's so appropriate for us to see them together, this weekend. For those of you planning on watching them on TV, or they're 40 times, I guess, when they run here on this Friday. Appropriate to see them together because that's the way in which we come to sort of expect them, side by side together. And speaking of Sony Michel, he also, when it comes to the bench press stuff, what did he do? Is it 22 reps? I believe if I've got that number right, he did 22 reps of 225. And this is the point that I've been trying to make about Sony Michel for a while. And this is even appropriate to bring up when you start making the sort of like James Cook, the 2018 signee for Georgia, is the next Sony Michel at Georgia. You're saying a lot when you say that anybody's the next Sony Michel because this guy's more than just the, kind of quote-unquote slot receiver, running back who can catch the football, running back who uses his quickness and elusiveness. Michel was kind of right there with Barkley and Chubb, my understanding is, in terms of the bench press reps for the running backs. After that, you really fall off. And that kind of physical strength from Michel is what a lot of us saw in 2015 when Chubb was hurt. Michel was the sort of the feature back for Georgia. He's running between the tackles. He's doing the traditional tailback stuff, and he's getting nearly 1,300 yards rushing. I think that when people say Sony Michel is going to be a really good pro, I think a lot of times they're sort of alluding to the speed and the quickness. But for me, the power from Sony Michel is truly underrated. But of course, I am probably biased on that, so maybe you take that opinion with a bit of a grain of salt as well. But when Sony was on DawgNation Daily a few days ago, he talked about the mindset you kind of get into to get ready for the NFL scouting combine, to get ready for the NFL draft, and to get ready for a pro career that comes after that. And you certainly got the impression that as pressure-packed and stressful as it might be, he's still enjoying the process here. Here is Sony Michel.
It's amazing. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's something that I've been dreaming for a long time. I'm excited, just been locked in, focused, just prepared. I'm preparing myself for the combine and just for the future.
Yeah, it's great to see. And it's that preparation for something like this, what you're seeing these guys go through on television over the course of the next couple days. All the Georgia guys are going to be kind of doing through this. It's that preparation that I'm fascinated by because, this is one of those things that, many of us will, almost no one listening to the show will ever experience, what it's like to be a great athlete, first of all, but then to keep climbing the ladder of football success to the point now you're in a room with people who literally look just like you. Sony Michel is by far and away the best athlete in any room he's ever been in, on any field he's ever been in. Nick Chubb the same way, different fields, different plays growing up, but they're head and shoulders better than everybody all along the way, even for the most part in the SEC. Even at Georgia, as talented as roster is, they sort of stand out as sort of special athletic specimens, even apart from a whole host of great athletes. But now you've sort of climbed that ladder even farther, and all of a sudden now it's just people who look like you. It's just elite athletes. And now you've got to prove that you're better than these guys to take the pot of money that they're all competing over. How do you get yourself ready for that? What's the mental approach like? Well, for Sony Michel, it's the same approach that he's taken on fall Saturdays the last 4 years. Here is Sony once again.
My approach is kind of similar, just like a game. It's something I've been doing for almost my whole life is drills. I've been running drills my whole life. I've been running sprints my whole life, which I can consider a 40. So, I'm just going to train for it, and the ultimate goal is just go out there, do what I do what I've been doing, and just have fun doing it.
Yeah, listen, I love hearing Sony Michel on that. It was great to have him on DawgNation Daily a few days ago. I'm really excited about talking to him, Nick Chubb, and the rest of our folks at DawgNation Appreciation coming up on Thursday, March 15th, and I can't wait to see where these NFL careers, what we're talking about today is the two running backs in particular, where it's going to go. I don't know how high they get drafted. I don't know how many teams pass over them, but I do believe this. I believe that the teams that pass over both Chubb and Michel, if you need a running back, you may regret not taking one of these guys, because I think Chubb and Michel are both heading towards pretty impressive NFL careers, and as they do, I think Georgia fans will have plenty to smile about every year along the way. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, and I am so glad you're with us on the show today. Whether you watch us, you listen to us, you access us as a podcast, however you're participating in the show, we're just really glad you're here. Of course, we are on video, 10 a.m. on the DawgNation Facebook page, every Monday through Friday, on the radio at noon with our friends in Athens, the Classic City, on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Rep, and in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud. Our Android users are checking in with the show each and every day. I post the show at the world-famous DawgNation.com. You can kind of click in and listen from your desktop or mobile device there, the DawgNation app. It is all out there for you, and we're really glad that you have been a part of a DawgNation Daily with us all these years as we kind of roll into what will be our fourth season covering the Dogs coming up here in 2018. Hard to believe that. Unbelievable how time has flown, but it has been fun every step of the way. And the biggest event in the history of DawgNation, and certainly in the history of DawgNation Daily, comes up on Thursday, March 15th for our DawgNation Appreciation. Been telling you about this now for a while, and it keeps getting even bigger and better. Of course, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Roquan Smith, those were the first special guests we're able to announce for this. The VIP tickets, which included autographs and photos with these guys, just sold out. I'm talking about just as quickly as we could put them on sale. There are still some premium tickets left that do include an autograph opportunity from either Chubb, Michel, or Roquan. You can go to DawgNation.com. There's a tab up at the top of the page. You can kind of click into that, and you can get your tickets there. We also have general admission tickets, and the general admission tickets start at just $49. And the great news about the general admission tickets is that ticket gets even bigger and better with our latest announcement, really a couple of them, both in terms of another player added to our lineup here. Excited to welcome in Davin Bellamy to the DawgNation Appreciation lineup. He's going to be in our sponsor village before the event on Thursday, March 15th with Humble Yourself t-shirts. And if you purchase a Humble Yourself t-shirt from Davin, you get an autograph from Davin. He'll either sign your t-shirt, or you can also bring in an outside item to get signed while time allows for Davin to sign those autographs. He'll be doing that in our sponsors village, so that's going to be awesome to have Davin Bellamy here with us on a DawgNation Appreciation Night on Thursday, March 15th. And as I've told you, we're going to announce that night a winner to a pair of tickets for all the big home games coming up in Athens this fall. So you can get those, all the football games played in Athens this fall, a pair of tickets to those games. We're going to announce the winner for that also Thursday, March 15th at DawgNation Appreciation. Of course, one of our great sponsors for DawgNation Appreciation is our friends at Marlowe's Tavern, and y'all know how much I love Marlowe's. And here's another reason to like Marlowe's even more right now, because I told you about how quickly the VIP tickets sold out for DawgNation Appreciation. Well, Marlowe's says for the people who did not get a chance to get them, for the people who wanted to buy them, but they sold out before we could get in and get them, how about we do a ticket giveaway for those folks? And it actually starts today. So I want to make sure I hit this hard so you can know what Marlowe's is doing for DawgNation Appreciation hopefuls here. If you're looking for a pair of VIP tickets, if you weren't able to get them when the event went on, Marlowe's is going to give away a pair. Now, here's how it goes. You can text the word Marlowe's. For those of you who are listening, I'll read it to you. MARLOWS. No apostrophe. Just MARLOWS to the number 24242. It starts today. This contest, in terms of the entrance, is going to run from today all the way through March 13th for your chance to win a pair of VIP tickets to the DawgNation Appreciation. That's the photo op with Chubb, Michel, and Roquan. That's the autograph from all three guys. That's special access to our VIP setup there before, which is going to be a great time to hang out with some really cool folks and some really interesting scenario there in the VIP situation. So go ahead and text the word Marlowe's to 24242. I'm sorry, let me read that one more time. 24242. Text the word Marlowe's there to that number, and you can get in for your registration. Of course, the drawing is going to be announced at noon on March the 14th. So get on in on that, and Marlowe's going to give away a pair of VIP tickets to the DawgNation Appreciation. I am really excited about that. Let me do one more thing here, and that is set the stage for what's going to happen here over the next couple of days here on DawgNation Daily. With the 2018 NFL Draft Combine taking place this weekend, there's already some attention that's being paid to what the NFL Draft might look like in 2019. And what I find kind of interesting is I'm actually going to talk more about this on the show a little bit later on today. You know, some of the folks at ESPN are kind of saying, hey, here are some of the big names you could expect to see for the NFL Scouting Combine in 2019. A lot of SEC names on that list. But what I noticed was you didn't really see the Georgia names on there. A lot of Georgia guys factor heavily into the draft conversation here in 2018. At least in terms of previewing the 2019 draft, you don't see as much of that. But I think there are a few guys who could make a big name for themselves over the course of 2018. That's what a lot of this season is going to be about. So in the days ahead, you're going to listen to me talk about Jonathan Ledbetter a lot more, DeAndre Baker a lot more on the defensive side of the ball, DeAndre Walker on defense as well. Maybe on the offensive side of the ball, this is where Isaac Nada steps up and becomes a big draft prospect. We're going to talk a lot about that in the days ahead in terms of how it factors into Georgia's spring practice here as well. I think this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to having that with you on DawgNation Daily. Before I welcome in my special guest here today, let me also tell you as well that it's time for our Kroger Click List Checklist. Busy weekend going on around UGA athletics. A lot to talk about here. You got the Lady Dogs in the SEC tournament. You've got the men's team closing out their regular season at Tennessee on Saturday. Diamond Dogs in the Holy City against the College of Charleston. Of course, the Gym Dogs there in Augusta for an event tonight. That's all taking place this week. It's our Kroger Click List Checklist, and Kroger's got a special offer for you right now. It's tomorrow only. Get Nabisco family-size snack crackers or cookies for just $1.99. Download coupon at Kroger.com or the Kroger app between now and tomorrow and redeem in stores on Saturday only. That's Saturday, March 3rd. Good to have you with us here on DawgNation Daily. Let's get ready to welcome in a special guest right now. And doing a great job today of helping us fill in for Jeff Sintel, who's taking care of a little vacation time, is one of our great friends, a guy that we love checking in with from time to time here on DawgNation Daily. It is our buddy from SECCountry.com. He covers Auburn recruiting normally. He's nice enough to talk a little UGA recruiting with us today. It is Benjamin Wolk here once again on DawgNation Daily. Ben, thanks for your time. How you doing?
I'm great, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Now, one of Georgia's biggest rivals, obviously, Auburn. They've started spring practice here. I want to get to that with you before we are done here on today's show, but I wanted to kind of get your sort of outside perspective. You know, we talk to Jeff Sintel about a lot of these names here on DawgNation Daily each and every week, but I want to get some of your outside perspective on this for right now about some of these other big names for Georgia in that 2019 class. And let me start with a couple names that we've kicked around a lot here recently. Both Georgia commits, both 5 stars. Nolan Smith, who's the pass rusher. Jaden Hazelwood, who's the wide receiver, now the number 2 player in the country in the 24/7 Sports Composite player ranking for 2019. And as you know, because you follow all this closely, Smith and Hazelwood are UGA commits, but they do take some visits. You know, Hazelwood was at Florida this past weekend. Nolan Smith was at Alabama. Had some kind of curious comments about that whole situation, yet both have sort of unwavered in that fact that they are committed to Georgia. How does the recruiting community view Smith and Hazelwood right now? Are these solid Georgia commitments? That's what we seem to be hearing from some people, but is there any doubt that maybe some of these visits could prevent or provide an opportunity for a program to sway either Hazelwood or Smith?
Well, both of those guys have visited Auburn within the last month and a half or so. Jaden Hazelwood was probably sometime in January, and then Nolan Smith was at Auburn's junior day on February 3rd. So both of them have familiarity with Auburn, and I think that both of them were actually I know Jaden was at the Georgia-Auburn game in the fall. I believe Nolan Smith was at least one Auburn game in the fall as well. So, I mean, you look, everyone that follows recruiting knows that these two guys are looking around, but at the same time, I know, at least from talking with my sources close to Auburn, they don't feel a supreme sense of confidence when it comes to these guys, and not necessarily that Auburn would be the school that either one of them would flip to necessarily, but I think that usually talking with sources close to one team that they're at least considering gives you an idea of how realistic a flip could possibly be, whether it be to that school or another. And I think that right now, these are 2 top 10 prospects. These are guys that everyone in the country would love to have in their class, and so everyone's going to try and flip them, whether it's actually realistic or not. The one thing that I find interesting about Nolan Smith specifically, whenever I talk, for instance, Auburn wide receiver commit George Pickens is a guy that's similar to Nolan Smith and Jaden Hazelwood in this regard, that teams like Alabama and Georgia and Florida are going to be recruiting him regardless of the fact that he's committed to Auburn. I was talking with him about his interest in Georgia, and he said that the one thing that has really drawn him toward Georgia over the last couple of weeks, not that I think that he's in any danger of flipping from Auburn, but his communication with Nolan Smith and Nolan Smith sort of selling Georgia to him, that has been a big reason why he wants to show more interest in Georgia. And I think that whenever a guy like Nolan Smith is reaching out to other guys, a guy that's a top wide receiver committed to Auburn, I think that's a pretty solid indication of how firmly committed they are. And then with Jaden, I mean, Jaden's the best wide receiver in the country by my estimation, and I don't think that there's much of a comparison there. And he's going to look around. I mean, there's people that are going to recruit him for the long haul, but he was a guy who committed to Georgia very early, and I think that he committed to Georgia very early knowing what was going to happen with his recruitment going forward. So I don't think that either of them are really in the panic phase for Georgia fans right now. I think it's just they're going about their recruitment.
Yeah, I think we've seen this kind of thing before. That's at least the thought that a lot of Georgia fans have, is that this is the kind of thing where we have seen guys like this want to enjoy the process and take their time. And I think a lot of Georgia fans are sort of building some confidence that the visits don't necessarily mean these guys are heading anywhere else. Let me talk to you about an uncommitted player here for a moment, though, and that's Owen Popo. Obviously, he's drawn a lot of attention. He's one of the top 10 players in the entire country by almost any estimation. And Georgia fans are certainly hopeful that they could, get him as a part of this 2019 class. Popo has certainly visited Georgia plenty. And what's kind of funny is, even though I guess most of the recruiting services would sort of designate him as kind of an outside linebacker, it seems that for Georgia, they would potentially use him much the same way they may intend to use Channing Tindall here a little bit, as kind of an inside linebacker. And then, obviously, that brings to mind Owen Popo's the next Roquan. In fact, Ben, I do this show on Facebook Live every day, and, I mean, you'd be amazed at just how many people in the comment section sort of bring that idea up over and over again, that Owen Popo, where he'd come to Georgia as part of the 2019 class, would be, quote, the next Roquan. Is that an unfair label to kind of attach to him, or does that comparison actually stick in your mind?
I mean, I guess it's unfair from the sense of that's really high expectations to live up to, but I think that Owen's the type of player that can certainly do that. And I think that it's a fair, from a playing style standpoint, a versatility standpoint, what he brings just mentally to a football program. I mean, Owen's one of the smartest guys I've covered in recruiting. He gets it. He understands the process. He understands the game of football at a really, really high level. I also like the Channing Tindall comparison for what it's worth. I mean, I think that if you're trying to look for a guy in Georgia's last class that compares favorably to Owen Popo, I think Channing's the perfect example of that, and I could draw a lot of similarities between those two prospects that probably also carry over to Roquan Smith as well. So that's two guys that I think that Georgia fans would probably be excited to hear somewhat compared to Owen or compared to Roquan. Owen is, I think, the world of Owen as a player and just as a person and a recruit. I know that Auburn does as well, and that's why they've made a serious push over the last month. I'm actually in the minority in this. I think this is going to come down to a Georgia-Auburn battle because of his relationship with Travis Williams, even though I know that Clemson's in this, and he released a top 3 at one point with Clemson and Nebraska, and that there have been some other schools in the mix. I mean, I think that he is clearly Georgia's to lose, and I think that that's where he lands. But I think that this does become a Georgia-Auburn battle down the stretch, and whoever gets Owen Popo, and right now I'm leaning toward Georgia, I think they're getting one of the 5-10 best prospects in the entire country.
I'm curious about this. If Popo were to go take a visit to Auburn when he speaks to those coaches, what are they selling him on? Are they selling him more on like the outside linebacker pass rush type thing, or are they also saying, hey, you want to play the inside, we'll give you a chance to do that, maybe like Rashawn Evans kind of did at Alabama a little bit. What is the selling point from an Auburn or a program like Auburn to a Popo? Are they talking more outside, or are they talking more inside?
I can only really answer to Auburn specifically, and he did visit Auburn February 3rd for their junior day. And that was, when he left that was when he was saying that he needs to rearrange his top 3 because Auburn needs to be in there. And I've spoken with him subsequently, and he said, yeah, Auburn's really up there in that number 2 spot. I mean, Georgia still clearly is number 1 school. But what they preached to him was, one, Kevin Steele and Travis Williams like all their linebackers to know all 3 of their linebacker spots. I mean, you see it. They run so many 2 and 3 different linebacker sets that they like all 3 of their guys. I mean, they have 3 starters right now, really, Montavious Atkinson, or last year, Montavious Atkinson, Trey Williams, Deshaun Davis, and then really Darrell Williams as well, who will fill in that Trey Williams role this year. And all 3 of them did, all 3 different things at linebacker. The one thing that Travis Williams and Kevin Steele preached to Owen Popo at Junior Day was that they want to see more film of him at inside backer, sort of doing that Roquan Smith type of role. they want to see it on film just because they know that he has it in him as a player, but that he does have a lot of pass rushing on tape, and that he does have a lot of outside backer on tape, but they know that he has that inside skill set. And I think that probably throughout the spring, I can't imagine that Auburn's the only coaching staff that's telling him that exact same thing. So I think that, throughout the spring and then obviously going into the fall, he may have a college decision by then, but I think that you're going to see a lot more of inside backer for Owen.
So I think one of the interesting things about Georgia is, as well as it's done in recruiting, number one for 2018, going to try to be number one again in 2019, number 3 in 2017, although that was like a number one level class in a lot of recruiting years. Yet the last couple recruiting cycles, have been largely absent of the elite defensive tackles. They may have bring in some good ones. I know a lot of people like Devontae Wyatt, what he brings to the table. Walthour and Jordan Davis both have their fans too. But in terms of the very high 4-5-star player, the defensive tackle spot's been largely absent from that conversation in 2017, 2018, which I think puts the spotlight in a big way on recruiting that position for 2019. I know that Jeff Sintel agrees and has talked about that a lot here on DawgNation Daily Plenty, which means a guy like Trayvon Walker becomes a big name to mention here on my show a lot in the months ahead. The best defensive tackle in Georgia, certainly for 2019, one of the best in the entire country. Have you seen Walker? What do you like about him? What should Georgia fans know about him? I mean, is this potentially that next elite defensive name in terms of a defensive tackle to kind of land in a Georgia class? And if so, what should Georgia fans be excited about here?
Well, for starters, I don't think the Georgia fans should worry too much about the not landing on the elite level defensive tackles. For starters, I think very highly of Jordan Davis and Tramel Walthour, obviously Devontae Wyatt from the class before, and then went through JUCO. I think pretty highly of all three of those guys. And just nationally, especially in the Southeast, the defensive tackle position was just down. So, I mean, other than Stephon Wynn in last class, I don't really know of many elite defensive tackles that Georgia was really even going after very hard. But with Trayvon Walker, what's funny is, the first time I actually saw Trayvon Walker was on a basketball court. At the time, an Auburn 5-star basketball commit, E.J. Montgomery, I think now is actually leaning toward Kentucky, but he was playing in a basketball game against Upton Lee, who has Trayvon Walker. And so the first time I ever actually saw Trayvon Walker was as a basketball player, and he was a really impressive athlete on the basketball court. And I remember asking people while I was at that game, who's this, I think he was wearing number 32, who's this number 32, who's this number 32? And everyone there flat out said to me, oh, well, you're going to know him as a football player. And sure enough, he's now, a top 30 player. Interestingly, Auburn hasn't actually offered Trayvon Walker yet, and I don't know, that may be one. Oftentimes, Rodney Garner likes to slow play defensive linemen, and it tends to work out for him. So he may be just waiting to evaluate spring. It also may be a situation where Georgia might be so in it for Trayvon Walker, and they are such a favorite to land him, that Auburn may not make a serious push because they might go another direction. But regardless, I know that Georgia is the team to beat for Trayvon Walker, and he is one of, if not the best defensive tackles in the entire country. And I think that I haven't actually seen him play a live football game. I've seen him in person, playing basketball, obviously, and then I've seen him at some camps and things like that. But just from seeing him play basketball, I was very impressed with his unique skill set for a defensive tackle, that's for sure.
I want to talk to you about Auburn spring practice, which began yesterday. I want to get some thoughts from you on that, especially given a couple of the interesting scenarios that are going on there. Before I do that, let me squeeze in one recruiting question, though, if you don't mind. A subject we've been interested in lately is, even with what Georgia has right now, which is an elite stable of running backs, all of which expect to be back, for Georgia in 2019, there is still that thought, though, of, hey, if Georgia can get another big back for 2019, it looks like it's going to try to do that. Hosted Noah Cain recently, in the mix for some other names here. From a roster management standpoint, do you expect a program like Georgia to still go after a big, high 4-star name, even though the running back spot at Georgia is still pretty deep here?
Yeah, I think they're obviously going to try and find that elite guy. From a coaching staff perspective and a personnel perspective, I don't think you really care so much who you have on your roster. You do to an extent. If you have certain needs, you need to know what position groups you got to emphasize more. But from a coaching perspective, I think that Georgia every single cycle is going to try and go get one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the class every single year if they can. I don't know how feasible that's going to be. From talking with Noah Cain, he is another guy who visited Auburn in February. I don't think that he's the type of guy who's going to shy away from competition, but obviously he's getting chased by Texas and LSU and Auburn and Florida and, you name it. So I don't know how much success Georgia is going to have with a guy specifically like Noah Cain because of the depth chart, just because, a lot of guys are, there's a lot of great places across the country that he's going to have a choice to pick from, and most of them are going to have better depth chart situations than Georgia. I think back to the year in between Gurley and Keith Marshall and in between Chubb and Sony, and I think that they landed that in the class in between that. I think the guy they got was A.J. Thurman at Georgia. And it's just really hard when you've got elite running backs every single year. Sometimes those every other year classes, you kind of just have to make a sacrifice to the running back position. I don't think that's what Georgia wants to do. I don't necessarily think that's what Georgia will do, but I think that they're going into it knowing that it's not going to be easy after bringing in a guy like Zamir White and a guy like James Cook. It's not going to be easy to recruit running backs, but luckily, if you miss on running backs in this class, you can lean on the fact knowing that you had 2 elite guys in the last class, and then you'll probably try and hit a home run in the 2020 cycle.
Speaking of running backs, the beat that you're on there at Auburn, with the spring practice beginning this week, it certainly seems like the number one storyline there is also who's going to start being the running backs there with Petway and Kerryon Johnson gone. Is it Cam Martin now ready to be the true featured back and kind of be a SEC star? Is a true freshman like Asa Martin going to kind of step in and help fill that void there? Is running back the big story for Auburn this spring?
I think so. I think that the 2 big storylines for Auburn probably are both on offense. So if you were to talk to Kevin Steele on defense, I'm sure he'd say that the big storyline should be who's going to play safety for Auburn this year. But I think that the fact that Jarrett Stidham is dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury, and that gives Malik Willis and Joey Gatewood first-team reps throughout the spring with an opportunity to sort of compete against one another, knowing that Jarrett is going to be back for the fall to start. I think that's one of the big storylines. Then obviously the running back position. Auburn's had a 1,000-yard rusher every year since 2009. Who's that going to be this year? Is that guy going to be there? I remember 2 years ago when Javon Robinson got kicked off the team, we got dismissed during fall camp. There was big question marks. Is there actually a 1,000-yard rusher on this team? At the time, Cameron Petway and Kerryon Johnson were both on the team, but neither of them had really proven themselves. No one knew what to expect. Obviously, I think that based on that scenario 2 years ago, when Cameron Petway turned into what he did during the 2016 season, and Kerryon turned into what he did for the 2017 season, that guy is there on this roster in 2018. It's just a matter of who it is. You named a lot of them. I think that it could be any one of those guys, and I think that competition is really going to, sculpt this team in 2018. However, I don't know if it'll solve itself in the spring, but that competition that's going to go on between Asa Martin, JaTarvious Whitlow, who is an unmentioned name kind of in that conversation that I think a lot of people are going to know about by the fall. But Asa Martin, JaTarvious Whitlow, Devin Barrett, Cam Martin, I think it's really those 4. One of them is going to take over that role as Auburn's lead back, and generally that results in being a 1,000-yard rusher.
Ben, it is great to have you here on DawgNation Daily. We're fans of your work over there at SECCountry.com. We don't like the team that you cover, but we like your coverage, if you get my point on that. We appreciate you being with us today on the program, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Awesome, Brandon. Always a pleasure.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Yeah, fun to catch up with Ben Wolk here today on DawgNation Daily. I, of course, miss my buddy Jeff Sintel, but I love Benjamin Wolk. I like his recruiting work. He is a sharp guy, and it's one of the things on SEC Country Live we like to do. Of course, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Thursday, on the SEC Country Facebook page. It's also something that we like to do here on DawgNation Daily. Let's go out and get that outside perspective on recruiting. A guy that covers Auburn recruiting. Let's find out what he thinks about some of these names that Georgia going after. And you know what? Pretty interesting insight in that. You get a chance to talk to Owen Popo coming off an Auburn visit. Does what Popo says on the plains check out what we're hearing here in around the Athens program too? I think it's really good stuff. I think it's a valuable way to spend our time here on DawgNation Daily, and I was really glad that Benjamin Wolk was able to do it. Don't forget, I reminded you of a couple things earlier. Let me remind you one more time. Kroger has got a great thing going on tomorrow only. That Nabisco family-size snack cracker or cookie, just $1.99. You got to download the coupon at Kroger.com or the Kroger app. You can do that right now for the special that's tomorrow, March 3rd only. So check that out at your local Kroger. And also don't forget, you can text the word Marlos to 24242 starting today between now and March 13th for a giveaway on March 14th for a pair of VIP tickets to the DawgNation Appreciation on Thursday, March 15th. We're really excited about that. I also mentioned something else earlier in the show, and as I said, we're going to do a little bit about this coming up over the course of the next couple of days. Because if you really want to set the stage for what 2018 on the field is going to be like for Georgia, It's the guys that are not getting draft attention right now who likely could make big names for themselves over the course of the next 12 months. And the names here are obvious, and we'll kind of get into that more. But I did want to kind of focus in for a minute here, at least, on who ESPN did mention from the SEC in terms of the guys who could be combine stars in 2019. And I'll admit, I always like this kind of stuff. One of the names on there is Raekwon Davis, the big defensive tackle from Alabama, who I thought did just give Georgia fits in the national championship game. I mean, that is Alabama at Alabama's best right there. That big, beefy defensive tackle who's a load to deal with. Deron Payne was very much like that. 2 for Alabama, and it's names like that keep Alabama being Alabama, and I do expect him to be a huge NFL star a year from now. It's one of the reasons why you got to keep recruiting defensive tackles, so George can also look like that. Jarrett Stidham's on this list. Y'all know that I think Stidham is a good player. I think Stidham's going to have a big year. I think that we just talked to Benjamin Wolk about Auburn running backs, but I think in terms of how good Auburn is this season, I think that Stidham's a big part of that story there. I also thought it was interesting that Nick Fitzgerald makes this list, a guy that Georgia probably made look pretty bad a year ago, a guy who I think of as much more of a running quarterback than a passing quarterback. He's coming off injury as well, but it seems like some NFL teams are kind of interested in Fitzgerald. I imagine the big body has probably a lot to do with that. I'm going to be a little bit skeptical of Fitzgerald and Mississippi State in general in 2018, though, just because of the fact that, first-year coaches have a little bit of growing pain. I mean, first year to the SEC, even if you have experience. In the case of Joe Moorhead, though, at Mississippi State, he's also a brand-new head coach. Greg Little and A.J. Brown, a couple of Ole Miss guys make this list. I wouldn't let that fool you. Little and Brown are both really good players, but the odds are Ole Miss is still going to be a very bad team in 2018, but kind of interesting to see a pair of Rebels show up on this list. There's the Kentucky linebacker Josh Allen here on the list, and then the LSU cornerback Greedy Williams. He also shows up here as well. So these are the guys that the SEC stars who ESPN thinks could be getting a lot of attention in the Combine in 2019. No Jonathan Ledbetter here. No DeAndre Baker. No DeAndre Walker. These guys don't show up here, but not even Isaac Nada, who's the former 5-star. These guys don't show up here, but I believe by 2019, by a year from now, at least some of these guys are going to have to step up and emerge if Georgia's going to be back in that sort of college football playoff type conversation. One of Georgia's rivals gets some good news. Tennessee has picked up graduate transfer quarterback Keller Christ from Stanford. Christ made this, I guess, sort of like Twitter official by tweeting out the picture of the Great Smoky Mountains, the power tee there. It says "Home Sweet Home." He says "Go Vols." In modern parlance, that means he's heading to Tennessee. I do think this is a big win for Tennessee. I don't know that Keller Christ is going to be a good quarterback, but I don't know that Garantano or Will McBride are going to be good quarterbacks either. I think having 3 to try to find one is a lot better than having 2 to try to find one. This isn't a referendum on Keller Christ. It's, do you want to have another quarterback or do you not? And in Jeremy Pruitt's case, he does. He wants the deepest competition he can get. I imagine it probably helps that Stanford is a program. David Shaw is the head coach. They have Mike Bloomgren's been the offensive coordinator. They have done a good job of teaching the quarterback position and develop guys at that roster. That teaching, that intelligence is what Chris will bring to him to Tennessee. I think that's got to help a little bit here. I'm not telling you this changes the Vols' fate, but it certainly makes it a little easier for Jeremy Pruitt to tread water in his first season, and will make that your SEC through. Okay, so as we get ready to wrap up the weekend here on DawgNation Daily, wrap up the week and head to the weekend, a couple reminders for you here. DawgNation Appreciation. Go to DawgNation.com. Of course, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Roquan Smith, our special guest, along with just added another special guest, Davin Bellamy, to the list. Really excited about that. If you go to the homepage, DawgNation.com, tab up at the top, you can click into that and get your tickets. General admission tickets start at just $49. Premium tickets that include an autograph item from Chubb, Michel, or Roquan, they are still available. And for the general admission folks, your chance at an autograph now, too, as Davin Bellamy going to be signing there in our sponsors village. That's really, really exciting and a great addition to Dog Nation Appreciation. Check out the Dog Nation Daily Double. I'll put a link at our show page at DawgNation.com. Also at the forum at forum.DawgNation.com. And, of course, we're Gator haters here on Dog Nation Daily. 239 days. Georgia beats Florida again. It's our Gator Hater Countdown. We'll see you Monday on Dog Nation Daily. And we have some time for some comments now. Thanks for being on the program. Hope you enjoyed Benjamin Wolk today. It's good to have a guy like that able to fill in for Jeff Sintel here on a Friday. I'm glad that Jeff was able to enjoy some vacation time. And one of the things I want to get into in a moment, I want to take all your comments today as well, but there was a comment from yesterday's show that I didn't see till the very end that somebody brought up. I don't know if Galen Jacobs is watching today, but Galen asked the question about, I guess Galen's in love. Congratulations to Galen on that. Maybe he wouldn't say he's in love. Maybe he's just interested. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's interested in a young lady, and apparently she's a big Auburn fan. And Galen was asking if I thought that kind of house-divided relationship had a chance to work. Maybe we'll kind of weigh in on that a little bit if you want to weigh in on the comment section. If Galen's here, maybe he can weigh in on that too. I saw that comment from yesterday. Nate Thomas reminds, we forgot Eddie again. Oh, Lord. Poor Eddie. Will one of you mind going to get Eddie for me? Let me see if I can get somebody to listen. Would you mind going to get Eddie for me? I forgot to get him again. I'm so sorry. Hannah's going to be nice enough to go get Eddie for me. Galen Jacobs is here. All right. So, Galen, tell us your story again in the comment section. So, Galen asked this yesterday about his romantic entanglement with an Auburn fan. Do I think that would work? And all I can say is this. I think that would be a little bit of a difficult thing for me. And not just because I'm like such a rabid fan I wouldn't be able to tolerate. Thank you very much. Here's Eddie. Y'all thank Hannah. Give her a thumbs up in the comment section for bringing Eddie back out here. Some days I'm a little bit more frantic than others. I don't want to say frantic. It's probably never the right word. I'm not super organized, really ever. And some days the victim of the disorganization may be Eddie here. So we're glad to have him back on the program today. Hate that we missed him earlier there. You gotta stay on me though. There's no telling what I might forget. But what I'm gonna say is, I'm lucky enough that my wife is a Georgia fan. She's not like a huge sports fan, I wouldn't say, but she's a big Georgia fan. And so we've always kind of had that sort of compatibility because of that. But listen, the heart wants what the heart wants. If you're truly in love, I think you got to try to find a way to make it work. That's my opinion on that. By the way, Tony Porter says he gives Hannah a hottie toddy for bringing Eddie in. So there you go. You got that may be the first time anyone's ever dropped the hottie toddy line here on DawgNation Daily, Hannah. So that's a good job. All right. So what Galen says is she's a good girl, but her being a fan is a hard thing to deal with. I'm taking her to the G-Day game and trying to convert her. Well, that's also a good idea. Melinda Moe says just don't watch the Georgia-Auburn game together. I mean, that is the thing here. I think I could tolerate a significant other that was a fan of another school, but I couldn't, like if Georgia lost, I couldn't deal with having it rubbed in my face in my own house, right? I mean, like go back to the national championship game for a moment. Like that was a miserable night. Georgia gets beat, Alabama fans are, acting like themselves. I didn't get home till like 4:00 in the morning. But at least I knew when I was, coming home after having worked that, all night long, I knew when I was coming home to a sympathetic house. Can you imagine if my wife had been from Tuscaloosa and after and during that at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, having to stay late and work, I drive home only to, come into the living room and find her doing Rammer Jammer once I got into the living room? I mean, that would be horrendous. So that's the only thing I guess you'd have a hard time dealing with here is is she going to rub it in your face if Auburn wins? If that be the case, that's not great. Ava Elliott Waters says a house divided cannot stand. That is also wisdom, Ava. I do appreciate that. Santiago DR talking about Eddie and Dan, the DG squirrels. That's funny. Yeah. So did Chip was talking about the squirrels? Is that what one of y'all said? Chip had his own blind squirrel last night. Is that right? What? Did Chip have a blind squirrel on his show last night? They're talking. They're not even listening. I'll have to try to find out about that. I didn't see that. Lee Allen Wells says convert or walk. Now, that's too harsh. I would certainly try to convert, and if it's the kind of fan that could be potentially converted, then you're probably okay either way. It's that sort of diehard fan. What I would have a hard time with if it was someone whose fandom of another school was just as passionate as mine is for Georgia. By the way, did Chip have a blind squirrel on his show last night? Wow. All of a sudden, my trademarks are being infringed upon. They are being infringed upon. Philip Jordan Wells says, I pity the fool who hates UGA, B.A. Baracus. Y'all remember the A-Team? That was the old B.A. Baracus. Used to love that show when I was a kid. Charles Geiser said it was just a picture of a squirrel, not a stuffed animal. All right. Well, that's fair enough. Will Scott talking about Nick Chubb getting 29 reps on the bench. That's 29 reps of 225, right? I mean, you got to be a pretty strong guy to do 29 reps of 225. That's a pretty impressive situation. Now we already knew that Nick Chubb was a sort of a superhuman athlete, but man, can you imagine? There's that great image from the Rose Bowl where, like 4 Oklahoma players have essentially Nick Chubb like this far from the ground, and he shakes them all off and runs for a touchdown. That's how you do that, right? I mean, you don't do that without like this superhuman level of strength, and obviously Chubb brings it. I mean, can you imagine trying to tackle him, trying to bring him down to the ground, trying to hope that you can get your head around and keep your head up and try to wrap up on Nick Chubb? He will make you regret that. Nate Thomas said he killed that bench press. Yeah, he did. And they're running the 40 today, right? I mean, I would imagine that he and Sony both run fantastic times. I'm guessing Chubb's probably a little faster than Sony, or am I wrong about that? But I'm guessing they both probably run really good times. Elliot Waters asked, would I convert to a Gator for my wife? No, I would not. I would not. Now, that would have been a deal breaker for me. What is interesting is I would never do anything like that for, my wife, but and this is going to come out the wrong way. I don't mean for it to sound this way, but I mean, I would never do that as a part of like a romantic relationship. But let's say your kid went to another school. At that point in time, are you gonna honor your kid? I sort of feel like at that point in time you kind of have to. So that'll be interesting to see if that ever happens. Now it's probably more likely to happen with my daughter than my son, but that would be kind of an interesting thing to see. How that kind of unfolds if you end up having to put the somebody else's gear on for your own children. Because I would imagine if you want to fast forward, decade and a half into the future, that becomes a little bit difficult thing to say no to. Danny Smith says his girlfriend's an Arizona State fan. She wears Georgia gear more than Arizona State gear. She likes Georgia a lot because of me. Well, that's good to know, Danny. I would say, though, that the one caveat to that is, like Arizona State, with all due respect to like the 2008, 2009 series, Arizona State and Georgia, are not, really rivals. I don't think it's really seen as a sign of disrespect or a sign of like betrayal to put the Sparky gear down and put the Georgia gear on. But Galen asking his girlfriend to put the Auburn gear down and put the Georgia gear on is an entirely different level of commitment. So I think it's good that your girlfriend is sort of, letting go of her Arizona State stuff. But it's a lot more of a statement to say, I'm not wearing the Auburn gear anymore. I'm going to wear the Georgia gear. That's a lot different kind of thing. Tony Porter says, I have a friend who turned to Clemson because his daughter went there. Now, I'm not turning to any school. I don't care. I mean, unless my kids actually played there, I can't imagine I'd ever even consider that because, let's be honest, I'm hoping the DawgNation Daily lasts for a little while here. I'm not looking to give this up anytime soon. But so I don't know that I would turn towards another school, but I would imagine that a lot of people do that, right? A lot of people probably end up rooting for other schools. And if a lot of the young folks that watch our show don't have kids yet, it may be hard to even understand this. I'm telling you, I see the world so differently now than I did before I had kids. I mean, you just realize that, your kids, there's a lot of stuff you'll end up doing for your kids. I mean, there just is. And I'm not telling you I'd ever become a Clemson fan because of my kids. I mean, I wouldn't unless my son was playing quarterback for him, I don't think. But listen, people do a lot for kids now. They become very hard to say no to. Robert Barnes says it could be a problem when you have children. Yeah, that's the other thing, too. And Robert brings up a really good point on this, and this is a perfect thing to be talking about on a Friday. If you have the house divided and then you have kids, is the other party in the relationship, whether it be the male or the female, is that person going to try to have undue influence on the kids? Because, like, what if it's a family of 4? That's what I have. I have a daughter and a son and a wife. What if the wife was a fan of another school and, listen, my kids like me, but my kids like my wife a whole lot more. So if she said, hey, cheer for this school, they're going to do that just to make her happy. So all of a sudden now in a family of 4, I'm the only one. All of a sudden it's not a house divided anymore. All of a sudden I'm the odd man out. That's the other thing about the house divided thing here is is all of a sudden you got some evangelism going on. You got the wife talking to the kids, and now they're wearing the Auburn stuff, and all of a sudden now you're a stranger in your own house. Is that the phrase? Whatever it is. That to me is the problem there. Joseph Daniel said, I'd break down if my kid went to Florida. Yeah, I really would. I mean, I'd rather my son go to Georgia Tech than go to Florida. My daughter, I'd rather her go to Georgia Tech than go to Florida. I just absolutely would. Absolutely would. Carlos Ingram says, my kids know I'm a dog no matter what, but I'll wear it on game day for them. That's right. I mean, and honestly, we saw this play out, right? We saw, Vince Dooley did this. Vince Dooley, no, I'm sorry. When Derek Dooley was Tennessee coach, Barbara Dooley cheered for Tennessee, but Dooley cheered for Georgia. Is that right? Is that y'all have to remind me how this was. I remember this being a big story back then, but gosh, it's been seemingly 9,000 years ago. It's hard to remember. I know that Barbara Dooley cheered for her son for Tennessee, but it seems like Vince Dooley sort of stayed officially on the side of Georgia. But the truth is, he may have said that publicly, but if your son's coaching at Tennessee, you want to see him do well because, I mean, Coach Dooley, the elder, Coach Vince Dooley, as much as anybody knows the pressure that goes along with coaching, they don't want to see their son sort of subjected to the kind of backlash that can be there from SEC fans if it doesn't go well. So that's an example we actually saw play out. Junior Baker says, I do recruiting, so I have kids all over the SEC in the country. I have to wear all kinds of colors. And Junior, that's such a good point. While I am not like in that circle, I have spent a lot of time around high school sports. A lot of my friends were high school coaches. I spent some time kind of on a volunteer basis working with high school sports. And when you know a young man that goes on to play sports, that relationship is so different than like the fan relationship, right? The sense of pride, and I'm sure Junior has this, a whole bunch, and a lot of you probably have the same thing. The sense of pride that you have for a guy that you know that goes on to play for a school, that's its own kind of fandom, right? I mean, it's totally different. Like obviously for me, the Georgia thing is more about the tradition of the fact that I've, cheered for this program, my entire life and spent time around this program. But there are very few Georgia players that I truly know personally. I know some of them personally, but it's not a long list of people that I know personally. But when you work at the high school level with a guy who goes on to play a college sport, I've known a few to do this. That's an entirely different, sense of pride. And it's not even that you feel responsible for getting that person there. That's not what it's about. It's just that you sort of saw it all happen every step along the way, and that's your own kid. That's obviously even more intense. But Junior's right that when you watch these guys grow up, and you're proud for them when they go do well. Even in some cases, if they do well at the expense of Georgia, it's just kind of nice to see good kids do well wherever they go. Al Clements says, in my house, I'm a Georgia grad, one Auburn grad, one Georgia Tech grad. We don't speak during the football season. That's pretty funny. Miriam Martin Corbin says, if I had to wear the Gator stuff, my skin would melt off. Well, the good news is if your skin did melt off, it looked just like those ugly swamp grain uniforms that Florida wore last season. Eric Moody says, I had some clients on the boat last week that were all wearing Gator gear. I almost charged them extra. That's pretty funny, Eric. I like that. Adrian Carver. Let me get Adrian's comment here. Adrian says, I'm a rabid Georgia fan. My husband is a rabid Virginia fan. Both of our sons refuse to even consider attending either school to keep the house in order. Right now, they support both of us. Don't know what will happen if our schools ever play each other, though. You know what, Adrian? That's not a hypothetical issue. What is it? Is it 2020? Georgia and Virginia are playing in Atlanta in 2020, so you got a little bit of a house divided situation coming up here pretty soon. Dogs and the Cavs don't play much, but the Wahoos are coming to Atlanta to play Georgia here in a couple years, so you're gonna have to deal with that. All right. Oh, so here's Jack Camarda. It's great to have Mr. Camarda watching the show today. He says, as a Clemson grad, still beyond excited to watch my son play for the Dogs. My wife's also a Georgia grad. I appreciate Clemson, respect the coaches and program. However, I'm all in for Georgia and will remain so. So that's Mr. Camarda. That's Jake Camarda's father. And Mr. Camarda, I can promise you this, that Georgia fans are super excited about watching the career of Jake Camarda unfold. But that's also a great sort of first-person perspective of kind of what that feels like, that when you see your son, especially in the role of a player, go play somewhere else, there's an entirely different level of fandom and appreciation that takes over, and that's a great story. I certainly appreciate you telling us that. Lee Allen Wells says, my wife and I met while we were both students at Georgia. This guarantees pure blood Bulldog babies. Lee Allen, I like that. That's a pretty good thought as well. And a lot of those marriages have certainly come out of that time spent at Georgia. Bob Fox welcoming the Camardas into the Georgia family. That's great. Alan Verbanchik says, I try to get known Gator fans down to the altar at church so I can at least cast that evil Gator spirit out of them. You know, it's funny. This is going to sound corny, but I really mean that it's true. Sometimes when on TV, they'll show, and this goes to show you how, I guess, bizarre I can be at times, or, you know, when you see the fans doing the Gator chomp during the games, and sometimes it's kids doing it, and sometimes in my mind I'm like, well, I can't believe those parents letting their kids do that. And then you realize, oh, yeah, that's not vulgar. That's just something I don't like. You know, when you see a kid doing that, you're like, I can't believe their parents letting them do that. But then you realize, no, that's not some sort of vulgar gesture. That's just what they do as fans. But I have sort of trained my mind to think that that's kind of what it is. Pretty funny stuff. All right, we got a couple more minutes here. Let me scroll back to get a couple of the earlier comments, and we'll see if we can kind of get out of here on a couple of football notes. It's been kind of a fun conversation here on this Friday. Hope you all enjoyed Benjamin Wolk today, by the way, filling in place of Jeff Santel. I thought the Ben's stuff on the recruiting was really pretty interesting today, taking a look at kind of what the thoughts are about Owen Popo and how Popo could eventually be in that kind of Roquan Smith conversation. That's a tough label to put on somebody, but I certainly thought that Ben explained why he thinks that label might be a good fit. Also, some pretty interesting perspective from him on kind of what that visit recently for Popo to Auburn kind of was like, and that's some pretty interesting stuff there on that. And then also, I think for Georgia fans who've been kind of wondering about the status of Nolan Smith and Jaden Hazelwood, a little more from another guy on that, about why those two look to be solid to Georgia, even though they continue to sort of take some visits to some other places. So I thought that was all really interesting stuff. Hope you all are getting ready for a terrific weekend. Don't forget a few things as we get ready to say goodbye here on the Friday. Text the word Marlows. And remember, don't use the apostrophe. It's just MARLOWS to 24242. Text the word Marlows there, and you can be registered to win. You'll get a response back, and you sort of take care of that there. You'll be registered to win a pair of VIP tickets to the DawgNation Appreciation, which comes up Thursday, March 15th, at the Coca-Cola Roxy Theater there at the Battery Atlanta. Do that. Lady Dogs in the SEC tournament, they play tonight against Missouri. That's 9 p.m. You get the men tomorrow against Tennessee on the road to kind of close out the season. We're back on Monday at 10 a.m. The podcast, we posted all the places the podcasts are found here coming up in the next couple of minutes, and you can check out the DawgNation Daily Double with more on the other sports coming up at the forum at forum.dawgnation.com and at our show page at dawgnation.com as well. Y'all have a great weekend. Enjoy it, and we'll see you again on Monday for another episode of DawgNation Daily.